Today, we are cracking open the secrets of a civilization that lasted for an absolutely astonishing 3,000 years. I'm talking about ancient Egypt, of course. To give you some perspective, the entire Roman Empire lasted for about 1,000 years. The United States? We're at less than 250. So how in the world did Egypt manage to endure for a stretch of time that's almost hard for us to even wrap our heads around? Well, it's a story of power, of belief, and of one seriously incredible river.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? How did they pull it off? What was their secret sauce that let them thrive for millennia, while other empires just rose and fell in what feels like the blink of an eye? You might think the answer is in a palace or a golden temple, but it actually starts with the land itself, with the life-giving water that flowed through it. You see, everything, and I mean everything in ancient Egypt, starts with the river. It was their lifeblood. It was the foundation that their entire world was built on, and it was the source of their unbelievable, long-lasting power.
Now, the Nile wasn't just any river. It was like a clockwork miracle. Every single year, like clockwork, it would flood. And these floods would leave behind this amazing, rich, fertile soil all along the banks. It basically created a lush green paradise right in the middle of a huge desert. This farming surplus was the engine of Egypt. It meant they always had food, which meant they had wealth, stability, and the freedom to build something that would truly last.
And with all that stability, something pretty amazing happened. I mean, think about it. When people aren't constantly worried about where their next meal is coming from, they have the time and the resources to develop other things, like a complex culture, a sophisticated government, and these incredible systems of writing. So the Nile didn't just grow crops, it grew one of the world's very first and greatest civilizations.
So you've got this stable, wealthy society, all fed and watered by the mighty Nile. But who's in charge of the whole operation? Well, at the very top of this world sat a figure of immense power, someone who was seen as way more than just a ruler.
They were called the pharaoh. But here's the part you really have to get. A pharaoh wasn't just a king. Nope, they were seen as a living god on earth. They were the direct link between the people and the heavens. So their word wasn't just law, it was divine will. Their power was absolute.
Okay, so how do you keep that kind of absolute power going for centuries? You do it through the genius idea of the dynasty. This was a system where power passed directly from a parent to their child. It created this clear, predictable line of succession. Honestly, it was a brilliant political move that stopped the kind of power struggles and civil wars that just tore other kingdoms apart.
Now, being a god king came with some pretty big responsibilities. While the pharaoh was worshipped, they also had to show respect to all the other powerful deities, the gods and goddesses of Egypt. And how did they do that? Well, they did it by building. We're talking massive, breathtaking temples, all to make sure the gods were happy with the kingdom, and of course, with its divine ruler.
Right, so you've got divine authority, but that alone isn't enough to run a huge kingdom. You need organization on a massive scale. And for that, you need the power of writing, to record laws, to keep track of taxes, and maybe most important of all for a pharaoh, to make sure your name and your legacy are never, ever forgotten.
What's so cool is that the Egyptians actually came up with two different kinds of writing for two different jobs. You had hieroglyphics. That's the beautiful, formal picture writing you see carved on monuments. That was built to last for eternity. But for the day-to-day business of running an empire, the scribes used something called hieratic, which was a much faster, sort of cursive-style script.
I mean, writing on stone is definitely impressive, but it's also incredibly slow. The Egyptians needed something way more efficient, and they found it growing right there on the banks of the Nile. They developed papyrus, which was this revolutionary kind of paper made from a reed plant. It was lightweight, it was portable, and it made managing a complex kingdom infinitely easier. Talk about a game changer.
And if you were a pharaoh, your name was absolutely everything. It was the key to your eternal existence. So to protect it and show just how important it was, your name was always written inside this oval frame called a cartouche. You can think of it as the official royal signature, like a magical rope that was binding and preserving the pharaoh's name for all time.
So all of this, the power from the Nile, the authority of the God King, the legacy saved in writing, it was all pointing to one ultimate goal for the pharaoh, making sure they had a successful journey to the next world and that they achieved true immortality. The afterlife was at the absolute core of Egyptian belief. They didn't picture it as some cloudy, abstract heaven, but as a perfect, ideal version of their life right here on Earth. But getting there was a dangerous, perilous journey, and it required a ton of preparation, starting with the body itself.
See, they believed that to get into the afterlife, your soul, or your ka, had to be able to recognize your physical body. That's why they perfected this super complex process of mummification. They would create a mummy by carefully preserving the body and wrapping it in linen. This was the absolute essential first step on that path to eternity.
During the mummification process, key organs like the lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines were taken out to stop the body from decaying. But they believed you'd need those in the afterlife, so they were preserved separately in these special containers called canopic jars. Each jar was protected by a different god, all ready to be magically reunited with the body in the next world. Once the mummy was all wrapped up, it was placed inside its final and most formidable protective shell, the sarcophagus. And this was never just a box. Oh no. It was a heavily decorated stone coffin, often carved to look just like the person inside and covered in hieroglyphic spells to protect them on their dangerous journey.
So where do you put such a sacred and important object? Well, while a tomb is the general word for any burial place, a god king, well, they needed something way, way grander. And for that, they built the pyramids. These were massive, artificial mountains of stone that served as the ultimate royal tomb, basically a physical stairway to the heavens.
So the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife was all set. But their presence here on Earth, their power and their divinity, was immortalized through these powerful symbols that they carved in stone, many of which still fill us with awe today.
And maybe no symbol shows their ambition better than the Sphinx. Come on, with the powerful body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh, it is the ultimate expression of royal power and divine intelligence. It's just standing there, a silent, eternal guardian of the secret pyramids.
You've probably seen an obelisk before, maybe in a picture of Rome or Paris, and maybe you didn't even know it was originally from Egypt. These tall, four-sided pillars, with a little pyramid on top, were seen as petrified rays of sunlight connecting the earth to the sun god Ra, and they were often covered with inscriptions about the pharaoh's amazing achievements for everyone to see.
But not all their symbols of eternity were huge and monumental. The humble scarab beetle, which you'd see rolling a ball of dung across the ground, was seen as this incredibly powerful symbol of rebirth and creation. They thought it mirrored the way the sun god rolled the sun across the sky each and every day. It became this hugely popular sacred image of regeneration.
And these powerful symbols were often worn as amulets. These were little protective charms, often shaped like a scarab or the Ankh symbol for life. And they were worn by everyone, from the pharaoh all the way down to the common farmer. They were meant to bring good luck and protection in this life, and just as important, in the next one too.
So you see how it all connected, right? The predictable Nile gave them wealth. That wealth supported a divine pharaoh, whose power was kept stable by the dynasty system and managed through the power of writing. And this entire structure, this entire civilization, was focused on one main goal: defeating death and achieving eternity. They built for forever. And as we look at their pyramids still standing after thousands of years, it really leaves us with one big question. What will our civilization leave behind?